My Lord, in that regard, I would also be referring to the same matter when it comes to Ms. Lombard, but I'd like to draw the court's attention to the matter of S. Stevens.
Matter open in front of me.
Thank you, my Lord. My Lord, this matter was finally decided in the Constitutional Court. And it dealt with...
The judgment that you referred me to is the SCA judgment.
Well, I do apologize, my Lord. I did not give you the full citation.
The one that I have is the judgment of Quist Stevens and the state, which is the other citation. I can find it quickly.
I'm just trying to see, my Lord. Yes, my Lord. It is a SCA decision. My apologies, my Lord. The citation I have is 417/03 in square brackets 2004 ZASCA 70.
Yeah, that's the judgment of Nafsa van Heerden and Ponnen.
That is correct, my Lord.
On the 2nd of September 2004.
That is correct. My Lord, in this matter,
yeah.
The issue here was the evaluation of the evidence of single witnesses and the assessment of the totality of the evidence. It's a guide as to how the court should consider and look at the evidence as a whole. My Lord, with reference to this matter, it is directed that the evidence should not necessarily be compartmentalized, but it should be all the evidence should be looked at in its totality. My Lord, with regard to accused 1 and 2 and the corroboration between them and any that there may be with Mr. Castillo, I submit that has already fallen away.
So, have you noticed something interesting in this judgment?
Beg your pardon,
have you
my Lord?
noticed something interesting in this judgment?
Yes, my Lord.
What did you notice?
My Lord, it went on appeal to the High Court.
It started in the Wynberg Magistrates Court. It then went on appeal to the High Court in Cape Town.
Yes, my Lord.
And who were the judges in the High Court?
You were one of the presiding officers, my Lord.
Once again, Judge Ndim points out to the defense that, hey, you're bringing this authority to me. Do you know who the judge is? And bing, 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 bing. Mr. Signarayan actually knew that Judge Nathan, aka Judge Ndim, was one of the judges in the appeal. So this case actually went to the appeals court in the High Court in Cape Town, and Judge Nathan was one of the judges who was sitting in that case. So why is Signarayan bringing this to the judge? He knows very well that the case went to him on appeal, so he is now using the judge's own judgment or comments from within that case in 2004, roughly around that. Don't quote me on the timeline. I'm also going to look it up and read the authority as well, because I'm curious. Okay, I'm curious on what Judge Nathan said then. So he is now using this as an opportunity to get my Lord's attention. And yes, I think he did good. He has my Lord's attention, but I know the judge is that was 2004. That was very, very early in the judge's career. So it will be interesting to know how the judge is going to turn this authority to his benefit, whatever his judgment is going to be later on today. But let's continue listening on, because I don't want to keep you here in my commentary. We have a judgment to get to.
And I might add, my Lord, that on appeal, your decision was overturned by the SCA.
No, that's right. Because we found that the magistrate was correct in the finding. And the SCA felt different.
That is correct, my Lord.
So it's the second case that's mentioned here where I was overturned.
That is correct, my Lord.
I think that the appeal was in 2004 in the SCA. and I sat with Mutala Jay, as he then was. So this would have been somewhere 2001, round about there,
I believe so, yes, my lord.
if not before that. Yes.
Yes, my lord, in my argument, I filed that this matter finds application. The court has to treat the evidence of these witnesses with absolute caution. My lord, with the evidence of the other witnesses having fallen away, I'm still going to deal with Laurentia, but with the evidence of the co-accused out, there's no corroboration with Mr. Kutsia and Mr. Paulus. I submit that his evidence, although there were not many inconsistencies, my lord, it's highly probable that accused number 3 would give him such sensitive information, especially because she does not know him so well. Information which could land her in trouble or put her in the situation where she is today. Another strange thing, my lord, is 6 or 7 months before the commission of the offense, she mentions it to the state witness, but accused number 1, the person she's in a relationship and who she lives with, she says or mentions this to him only the day before JOSHLIN has to be delivered. It does not make sense. I submit, my lord, that, as already mentioned, that because of the attention it got, Mr. Kutsia received more information, and what he told the court could not have been what was said to him. He could not have mentioned any of the elements or the fact of cash or the fact that someone would not be found. Another interesting thing to take into consideration, my lord, is the fact that, unfortunately, it happens quite often that children do go missing in this area as well, my lord. And it's not on every occasion that it becomes or that it receives so much of attention. Sometimes children go missing within a week. They found most people not even aware that it actually happened. So it's strange, my lord, that in August already, my client would have had an idea that something like this is going to bring so much of attention. How would she have known that a common thing or something that is not an isolated incident, something that happens in the community, that only her matter, when it happens, would cause such a big stir and such an interest in the community? That is also strange, my lord. I submit he may have met accused number 3, they may have had a discussion, but it's very unlikely it is what he said to this court, my lord. And applying the cautionary rule, I submit that the court on that basis cannot accept his evidence at the risk of a false conviction. My lord, on Stephen Kutsia, that is all the submissions I have, unless there's something the court wishes me to deal with regard to his evidence.
Except, of course, in Koos Stevens, the magistrate made the factual findings on the basis that she attached less weight to the purported contradictions because of the language issue. The witnesses were Xhosa speaking and the statements were taken in English. And we then confirmed that. We said, well, the magistrate made that finding, trial court. But applying the cautionary rule properly, a la Sols and the other authorities, the Supreme Court of Appeal was correct in overturning us. Because we should have found that the magistrate should have been more cautious, and we didn't. So on the application of the law, it's a good point to make that one's going to be super cautious when one deals with these issues. And that's the legal position.
Thank you. And for that reason, I asked that this court exercise its extra caution in deciding this matter.
On a serious note, we spoke about the Lubaka case the other day. There it was placing a person on the defense on some of the charges where there were confessions of co-accused, which is applicable here. I was overturned there as well. That was my very first case on the bench. As I said, it started on the 17th of September 1999. And Stevens was also a few years later. But one must have regard to the caution of the higher courts when one considers these issues. So I take your point, and I will, to the best of my ability, go and sit and look at it and take guidance from the authorities of the higher courts. That is why I've tried to impress upon council, give me authorities that's binding on me so that I can take the guidance.
Thank you, my Lord.
Thank you.
My Lord, I would now like to move on to Ms. Lombard's evidence.
Are you going to, because you've now heard the argument from the state, are you going to deal with their timeline at all? I just want to know whether I should open it, or you're just going to touch on it as you go along.
My Lord, I'm just going to basically deal with contradictions. And my Lord, with regard to timelines, there's been lots of uncertainty with regard to timelines in this trial. And I submit that one of the contributing factors is the use or the consumption of drugs, my Lord. It must be borne in mind that at all times, that all incidents that were testified about, Ms. Lombard as well as the accused were all under the influence of drugs.
And Ms. Lombard indicated that the effect of the substance stays in her body for a prolonged period. But it was also that, forget about the fact that she was already using for about 16 years at the time of the event, but during that period, let's say February of 2024, she says 2 to 3 times a day.
That is correct, my Lord. And even when she was explaining the discrepancies in her confession, which she had made, one of her excuses was that she was not in, or her mental abilities or mental faculties were impaired, and that she was not in a sound and sober senses. That is why she made those errors. And on her own as well, she told us that she consumed drugs on the Sunday and the Monday of the incident. My Lord, for that reason alone, based on what she told us, she confirmed that she was unreliable when she consumed drugs. My Lord,
and as you indicated, it doesn't only apply to her.
Yes, my Lord.
It applies to your client as well.
Yes, my Lord. That was the point I wanted to make, that there could be a discrepancy in the timeline because of the use of drugs. And it came out during this trial that not many people had cell phones and watches in the area, my Lord. So that could make it more difficult for anyone to actually estimate or give us a time.
In fact, Ms. Lombard had no reference to time, but for the starting time and lunchtime of Ayanda. And when some of the helpers would come and collect stuff. And
yes,
although I saw on one of the photographs, the second set of photographs that shows the inside of the house of Ms. Smith, of your client, there was in fact a clock on the wall.
Yes, my Lord. And I submit that for the reason stated, no one, neither Ms. Lombard or the accused, should be faulted for their incorrect times which they may have placed before this court. My Lord, Ms. Lombard was well known, or is well known, to the accused and accused number 3. From her evidence, they were good friends. She always went to accused 3's home. She always got food for her children from accused 3.
Well, you put a statement to Ms. Lombard about the relationship between Ms. Smith and herself, that it was such that if your client had something, she would share it with Ms. Lombard, which she confirmed.
That is correct, ma'am.
It was also a place that she could go for sustenance for her children.
Yes.
The impression I gained was that of the 4, I'm talking about the 3 persons that's accused here, and Ms. Lombard, except for the odd selling of an item, second-hand item, or the fixing of a cell phone by Mr. Van Rijn, and then on selling it, or Mr. Apollos now and then going to clean somebody's yard, or assisting Ayanda at the car wash. The only one with a regular stream of income and or provisioning for foodstuffs was Ms. Smith, because she was working every day and ultimately feeding their drug habit as well, because she had to go out every day. We heard the evidence of the Zegas family. Early morning, go and work, come back. We know, and I'm not casting any aspersions on persons using substances. It's an illness. And once you get addicted, it's very difficult. But she was the one that was looking after them in a great way. And of course, Miss Lombard had the assistance of Ayanda as well. But when it came to a regular stream of either income and food, Miss Smith was the one. So it seems from the evidence.
Yes, my lord. And from the way the matter or the events unfolded, and if one has to look at Miss Lombard and her behavior, my lord, one could almost say she's an opportunist. My lord, as correctly mentioned by the court, she was able to sustain and support her children through the assistance of Ms. Smith, and she took advantage of that. According to her version, she was promised money by Ms. Smith, and she went along with that, bearing in mind, my lord, that she is a mother as well, and she has children of her own, at least at that stage, maybe 4 children.
Of which 2 were with her.
Yes, and she submitted to this court that when she was told about money, she agreed, and she was happy with that. Again, my lord, she was going to gain from this, so she had no issue with it. She stuck to her version to keep quiet, according to her, because the money was still promised to her. When she realized now she's in hot water, the money is not forthcoming, and there's a very good likelihood she's going to prison, she decides to turn. She throws a friend under the bus, and she decides to talk. Again, an opportunity for her to save herself. And my lord, for that reason, I submit she would have said anything in order to distance herself and implicate another person so as to save her own skin. My lord, there were many contradictions in her evidence, material contradictions. And because she's a single witness, only one material contradiction is sufficient for the court to reject her evidence as false, being a single witness, if there's no other evidence to corroborate her.
That's where I want to go, because particularly insofar as it relates to your client, the state argues and concedes that there are portions of the evidence that I can't find reliability because it's not corroborated. But then they go further. They say, well, there's this so-called golden thread, a la Ms. Swanepoel. And there are the touch points where you find corroboration for the evidence. And if you then take only the portions that are corroborated and you have that warranty of reliability, which is also a term that one must be very careful with. When Quist Stevens, he would have realized from the Supreme Court of Appeal judgment that my judgment, that was the appeal from the Magistrates Court, was in Afrikaans. Because they used the term getrouheidswaarborg, where I indicated the magistrate found that the language issue not so important to break the chain, if one could call it that. So if one look at those touch points as the prosecutor has pointed out, what do you say about that?
My lord, just before I deal with that, before I forget, I just want to mention that Ms. Lombard had many opportunities to come clean. She on her own requested to speak to officials in order to speak the truth, but she still failed to do so. When she came to court, in court she was given the opportunity to speak the truth, but she was caught out in her lies in court as well. I submit that she lied throughout, even when she was given the last opportunity to speak the truth. She still never took the court in her full confidence. My lord, with regard to the corroboration of the golden thread as it is now, as I've already submitted, there was a link between what was said by Mr. Paulus in his exhibit and Ms. Lombard. That falls away now, my lord, because his evidence cannot be used against her. And I submit...
No. That's not the state's argument. The state's argument is, yes, we concede the evidence in the statement of Mr. Apollos, which is admissible against him, cannot be used against Ms. Smith, but it can be used to provide corroboration for Ms. Lombard, and then Ms. Lombard's evidence will then count against Ms. Smith. Let's just go to the so-called discussion on the Sunday of the 18th, where she said, I'm going to do this. Now, he says in his statement, Mr. Apollos, a discussion took place in the statement. Now, how I'm going to deal with the difference between the Friday and the Monday in evidence, that's a debate for Friday. It's a debate in my mind tonight and tomorrow, on which I will pronounce on Friday. Because you will recall when he didn't testify in the main trial. The statement is admissible against him as evidence, against Mr. Apollos. And the attack on the statement was twofold. One was the prerequisites. Second issue was the content. Now, Mr. Harmse takes him through it on the Friday, sentence by sentence. And you will recall that when the evidence was presented, Mr. Harmse wanted him to read it quietly to himself and then tell us where it would part ways between his own ability to compose a story on the fly and what was told to him to say.
Every time Judge Nathan speaks, I learn something new about him. And again, is he a sympathizer? Is he an empathizer of people with a substance abuse history? Or is it that he understands that world? So here he tells Kelly's lawyer that, listen, you have to understand something. Kelly was the provider of the group, okay? She was the one with a job, a job. She's the one who had a constant income. The others, Ayanda was supplementing here and there, but you can still tell they were dying of hunger, okay? Not literally, but the Rens would have to go and ask for food from Kelly. So Kelly had a permanent job. She was the provider, including of the substances, or should I say the finances around that. I appreciated that insight that the judge added because I hadn't realized that Kelly's the breadwinner. And think about it. If Kelly was the breadwinner and she has this substance abuse usage, it's not a cheap activity, okay? It is not a cheap activity, and it's not only substance abuse for herself, it's substance abuse for herself and her friends, okay? As they say, show me your friends, I'll show you who you are. But she was the provider. So was it bad for her to go out and find an additional source of income? And I hate to say it that way, but we're trying to think Kelly's mannerisms at the time. Was it too much pressure? Is she a people pleaser? Was she buying them substances to keep people around her? I don't know. But again, the defense did not call a substance abuse expert to the stand to talk about this. And now her lawyer is including this in arguments, but I think it's a bit too late. But in his defense, fortunately, the judge is well versed in my opinion. But so the judge says Kelly was the only one with a regular stream of income, ultimately feeding their drug addiction. I'm not casting any aspersions on persons using substances. However, a person using substances is an illness. It's that little sentence right there for me where we show again the judge humanizes himself, and he will put that human element in his judgment, or will he set that aside so that he isn't biased? And then he goes on to say, once you get addicted, it's very difficult. But Kelly is the one who was looking after all of them. Yeah, they sold a microwave here and there, but generally the money was coming from Kelly. What are your thoughts on that? I definitely want us to talk more about that in the comment section down below. Those are the points I have. Yeah. How did Kelly's lawyer do? I don't know. It wasn't a strong argument for me. But We'll wait and hear what Judge Nathan says. He does say, I will take your points and go and look at it and take guidance of the higher courts. Listen, that is just so admirable. And the judge humbles himself. He doesn't say, hey, I'm the judge. I have 50 years experience. If you know who says that, okay? He doesn't say all that. He says, I'll take that into consideration. And I hope that the authorities will guide me. So he's not the alpha and the omega in this decision. And I believe he's going to be quoting a lot of quotable quotes. It's not going to be a quick decision in terms of him saying the decision out. I think he's going to go into full lecture mode. He's going to take us on a journey. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Also, what's your prediction? What is your prediction? Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in my next upload.